We hear people complain every day about fascism, but it appears the line has officially been crossed here in the United States as Trump takes 10% of Intel on behalf of the United States. Welcome to the Between the Lies podcast, your weekly lesson on how to approach an uncertain world with positivity and balance. I'm Nicky P here with my good friends and money brains, Luke Tatum and Corey Sins from Perfect Spiral Capital. Gentlemen, are you ready for fascism?
Well, call it what you will. It's definitely a form of socialism. It has definitely lots of different flavors. I definitely looking at the news. What's my gut reaction to Intel? I I don't feel good about it. Intel was already starting to improve on their own. I don't know what the government has to offer, especially with our tax money.
Yeah, I mean, you've got a lot of things we can get into here. We pre-show, we're already getting into a lot of stuff here, and so I mean, it's a huge mess. It's an absolute cluster of problems and a lot to pick apart there. But one of the things that I see people talking about a lot is, is this socialism? Is this fascism? Is this communism? People don't even know the definitions of words, and that includes capitalism, right? And so, anytime you don't like anything, it's capitalism. That's what's trendy and cool, right? Um, my lizard won't eat the cricket that I tried to feed it, right? That must be capitalism's fault somehow. That's the level that we're at a lot of times with these kind of discussions. And so I think it'd be interesting to get into that. It's definitely late stage. What does that mean, Nick? I mean, let's not make this a episode about defining terms, But
Well, as much as we joke, I say, I think we've all kind of laughed for years as the left because Trump's he's going to be the guy that brings fascism to America. But the bottom line is you know we're already halfway there as he's putting troops in American cities to handle their policing. So then, like you wash the other hand with now taking actual state ownership of businesses. I don't think you get any more fascist of a government than that, or socialist, whatever you want to call it. It's all bad, but that's officially like you've checked all the boxes now, boys.
right. I mean, we're not the only people to say this by any means. There's been lots of buzz about it, but I did find an actual quote from Bernie Sanders. There's been lots of memes going around about this, right? Where Bernie Sanders supports Trump's decision to take ownership of Intel. Why would he support that? He's a literal socialist. He would tell you himself he's a socialist, right? And so I'm just going to read from my phone, but it says this is a quote from Bernie Sanders. If microchip companies make a profit from the generous grants they receive from the federal government, the taxpayers of America have a right to a reasonable return on that investment. And it's like, okay, where does that leave us? Really, I think is what we have to get into today. Is like, what does that mean for you and I? The U.S. taxpayer, the U.S. citizen. If the state is going to be taking ownership in companies, because they're talking now about not just limiting this to Intel. It's not just a one-time thing. It's, well, maybe we should buy Lockheed Martin. Maybe we should buy Raytheon. Maybe we should do, et cetera, et cetera. Isn't that a little bit like circular logic at a certain point? Like we're giving the money to the company so that the company can make a profit so that they can give money back to us so that we can, I mean, what are we doing? What are we doing?
So the obvious problem there, certainly when you're talking about something like Raytheon, is that look, it's all well and good for a government, I guess, get involved in speculation, which is its own thing. The problem, I guess I would rather they spend the money on something that at least has the possibility of returning a profit as opposed to just stealing it and blowing it up in the desert. That seems like probably a worse way to use our money. But the bottom line is they're starting by stealing it from us to do whatever they're going to do, which is wrong. Ignoring that for just a second, let's try and deal with the fact that God, if there's ever been an incentive to keep wars going, you know, the profit motive being there for the government is certainly not going to make things any harder for them to pass those laws to keep things rolling. Like, well, why didn't we never end a single war? Because it just, keeping making those bomb machines makes us more money as a nation. Like that's where the real issues all stem for me. It's like, Like, I don't dislike the idea of, at least if you're wasting my money trying to recoup some expense. But when you control the things that make that happen, well, it's no matter what the government does, it's licking its own ice cream cone. It's finding ways to take advantage of itself to make more, to continue creating what it needs to spend more. Like, it's frustrating.
And if we take a look at the history, we've got a lot of things on our home field that have already transpired. If we're talking about Woodrow Wilson shutting down temporarily the telecommunications, the trains, and then nationalizing them, was only for a certain amount of time, but we can still see even in 2025 that there are still regulations that are grip holding on both of those industries. We know that these aren't going to go away. This may even be a baseline for how the government interacts with the stock market, and another way to manipulate other things. But along with that is Intel themselves said that this is probably bad news for them because a lot of their income comes from overseas. And you've got when you're talking about like national defense, though, they're trying to use another excuse like, oh, this is going to bolster our defense, our social, or um, our national security. We're going to have that. So I feel like they're almost shotgunning different um, excuses to try to take control is my kind of thing. And also when the state controls an asset, they're we've already said this, they're using stolen funds to bolster this, and saying that it's in the interest of the taxpayers because we're going to have all these benefits, we're going to have increased interest rates, we're going to have appreciation in assets, and at the same time we'll have, the taxpayers will have no say over that. They may have some bureaucratic way to, elect some individuals, or will appoint people to these, finance czar positions or something like that. But the taxpayers are going to have the risk and they're going to bear it all.
True. I mean, it's the same thing we've seen, like at least since 2008, but certainly I would argue well before that. The whole privatize the risk, socialize the losses, model. That's more or less what we've had. It's like, oh, well, if the company's not doing well, we'll just bail them out, right? When does Intel become a too big to fail bank, like on the same level as those institutions? Oh, it's U.S. manufacturing. We can't let that fail, right? Oh, it's this. I mean, you just make up the excuses. They write themselves. But it's, oh, Intel can't hold up against other chip manufacturing companies, which, I mean, that's a whole can of worms too. TSMC and all these other places, like they do some of Intel's manufacturing. Only 75% of it takes place in the US anyway. And so you've got, it's all very global, and it's weird and one-dimensional to go, oh, well, we're going to prop up US manufacturing. We're going to prop up this company in particular because it manufactures in the US. I mean, it's Trump's like talking points that he gets on all the time. I wouldn't be surprised if he bought 10% of a company that, is working on the border wall, like stuff like that. The same kinds of things that he's supporting verbally, now he's going to buy interest in. And it just puts us in a weird spot.
So I kind of want to push back a little bit on this, in that, if you're deep in libertarian thought and you're looking at this strictly from that lens, it's real easy to get lost in the how it should be. There's a prescription for sure that, like, this is terrible, but there does seem to be a sense for me in which we do actually genuinely have some concerns about, say, national security and the whole global trade system. As much as I want it to be an open and free system, it's not. It's cobbled together, and most of the people we engage in trade with don't even really like us. Now, trade does work in that, but what happens when one of them feels like they've got the edge and then they want to screw with the system, and we're not set up because we have completely divested ourselves from certain types of creation?
I mean, it's an interesting question, but I don't think that the US government buying 10% of Intel is necessary for us to have US-based chip manufacturing, right? As Corey pointed to, like they're already taking moves. They're a profit-seeking company, right? If you want to talk about pure capitalism without any restrictions whatsoever, well, the company is going to seek to reconcile its books, clean up its act, make a profit. They want to turn a profit. They want to report to their shareholders in a favorable way. I mean, you do have some companies that do deserve to fail and should fail, and that is a natural thing, right? I hear what you're saying about we shouldn't focus on the shoulds, but Walgreens just is getting out of the S&P 500. They've been a publicly traded company for 98 years, almost 100 years, since 1927. They've been publicly traded. They are leaving the S&P 500 and they're becoming a private company again because they just haven't been able to clean up their act. If that were to happen to Intel, so be it. There's demand for chips. Demand will lead to people seeking domestic chip manufacturing, people seeking to set up some sort of a new way. Those factories are still there, right? The facilities, the expertise of the people who live in the U.S., the capital goods are here. It's just a question of how they can be allocated.
And the government can't allocate those resources properly. They don't have the price signals. They don't have the demand. They don't make things. They just take and reallocate or do whatever. And for the government to do this, you know, like Nick said, it's public. I can see my tax dollars right there on the ledger. However, it's creating a moral hazard for the too big to fail. It's separating specific businesses or industries apart, in the guise of trying to be better than other countries or to bolster America. It just doesn't historically work out, I think.
So there's another question, and that is that are you both of a mind that this is not as new as people are making it out to be? That this is just kind of maybe the next step or an expected evolution of our desire to allow our government to choose winners and losers whatever way they can?
I mean, I absolutely agree with that, Nick. It's something that we've seen with the Federal Reserve policy. We've seen with direct intervention in the economy previously. I mean, we've had all kinds of horrible policies in the United States over the last 100 years, 150 years, right? There's been a lot of bad things. Now, some of them haven't been permanent. Yeah, but exactly. The last 5 years are a reflection of some of the stuff that's happened in the past, right? It's the whole history, rhymes kind of thing, right? It's not exactly the same stuff, but it's similar enough. And, this is a return to government at its absolute worst, which is direct taking the reins of the economy. This is setting price ceilings, setting price floors, telling companies what to manufacture instead of letting them choose where to do that. I mean, the goal of a business is to correctly predict what people need and in what amounts, right? That's what you're doing. You're trying to serve demand. Demand is not a thing. You don't get a list in your email inbox that says this is how many products the world needs, right? You have to be able to navigate that and predict and help to shape trends. That's what your marketing is for and those sorts of things. And so, if a company can't do that, it shouldn't be here, right? If it makes too many mistakes, it should be absorbed into something else. What do you think, Corey? I mean, this is...
It feels like political allocation and not an economic one. It I don't think it really has a place. I think what this does for someone like me, I would see that the government is involved with Intel. I don't want that if I have a stock portfolio, I don't want that in there. If it's in a 401k, it just signals that there might be some shenanigans in the background or anything like that. So for me, the risk is too high, and that is for every individual to accept. There will be people who think that this gives the stamp of approval that this is the stock to buy. So it's gonna pendulum swing for many individuals. The other thing is we're talking about this in time right now as we have our current political situation. That political situation does the same thing at pendulum. So now the people who are actively interested in and want this to happen are suddenly going to be against it in the future. But the groundwork has already been laid. The problems have already been established, I think.
The political pendulum only goes one way. It doesn't ever seem to swing back. It's always swinging towards more control. Yeah, the cultural pendulum swings back and forth, and we're on the beginning of the right wing backswing that I've been warning about for 10 years. But I don't see this being, like you said, any different than anything that's happened in the past. It does just seem like the next iteration or the next rhyme in the verse of history. It's just the next thing that looks like the last thing, but it's kind of different. So you've already kind of, I think, started touching on this, but what are the ways in which we can, think positively about how this doesn't have to affect us?
I think this is just a perfect example of what not to do. And we can, in saying that, let's bring the infinite banking concept into focus here. So if we've got the government and they are taking an asset, but the taxpayers paying for it, but the taxpayer has no say in how that's used or operated, and then may get some sort of benefit, but they've already paid for it. Versus what we can do is we ourselves can set up our own policy that's properly designed, whole life insurance from a mutually insured company. And with that, then we are accepting the control for ourselves, for our families, and then also benefiting others in our local area. I have no idea why I wanted to go that way. No, it is. We are also not accepting the risk in these policies. That is something that is on the insurance companies to do with our funds. So I think we have full control. To sum it up, we have full control over our policies versus if we are looking into like the sovereign wealth fund. That's something that is really screams like a 401k to me, where we don't have control. It just is going to operate, and good luck.
Well, it's like what's true and what's an illusion, What is true if you are doing the infinite banking concept, if you're implementing that in your life, if you're taking direct control over your own wealth and all those things, and your capital and your ability to generate cash flow and all of these wonderful things that we talk about on a daily basis, what you're doing is really removing a lot of middlemen, right? You have a private contract with a company that you also own. You're a part owner if you're dealing with a mutual insurance company. And that is a very closed loop system, right? It's shielded from a lot of the negative things that we've been talking about, taxation being one of them. But the government likes to do things in a, vastly inferior way, but pretend it's the best version, right? And so, okay, well, we're going to steal your money. You don't get to pick if you're going to do this. We're going to steal your money. We're going to put it into this after we take a big old haircut off the top. 90% can go to our cronies. And then the rest of it can go into this thing, Social Security or whatever. And we're going to mismanage it. And then we're going to give you whatever's left at the end. Like, oh yeah, you can have a road. We'll fix your bridge every 45 years, whatever. And so direct control over industry like this is, it just boggles the mind. Why, if I wanted to own Intel, I'd just buy shares of Intel, right? I mean, obviously. So thank you for stealing my money, putting it in Intel, not giving me the dividend. Like if you gave me one, 330 millionth of the dividend of Intel every time, okay, I guess. But then why would the government do it in the first place? What did they get out of that? Right? So there's always other people that are kind of dipping into this and taking their share, which I would say is it's not really their share at all. They're just taking it, right? It's theft. And so why would you want that? Why would you want that? Why not just arrange your own affairs? Why not arrange your life so that you don't have to participate in these predatory systems? And you can do that. And that's what the infinite banking concept is to some extent all about.
Yeah, for me, it's the state owning the asset and then the taxpayers bearing the risk. We need to have our properly designed policies to protect us from that. No middlemen, no politicians are in there. I've read it several times. So I think that's what's important for me and hopefully for others.
Yeah, it's you, it's your family. Share with your friends, share with your grandparents, share it with your children, their children, right? The thing that makes such a big difference is when it becomes multi-generational, right? Everybody would love to have huge dynastic wealth. You hear jokes about being a trust fund baby or whatever. It takes like literally one generation to make that a reality. You just have to decide that you're going to think long range.
Well, and what's I guess really funny about all this is you have so much this is happening is like other nations are getting rid of their sovereign wealth funds as we decide we want to have one. Like it's like, well, welcome to the party 100 years late, guys.
Well, it's totally going to go way better. The U.S. is going to do a way better job because, hashtag America's the best country ever or whatever, right? Like, it's just the nonsensical position that we can do better than everybody else because hoorah, America. Like, that is not a reason,
Sovereign wealth, I think, is, sovereign wealth starts at home. That's with the individual. That's where it is. It's not in some ledger in New York on the exchange. It's not. It's the individual making a difference in their community, building up their ideas for entrepreneurialism. It's all those things. It's not a politician.
Yeah, that's my favorite quote from the episode, Corey. That's good.
Right on.
I love that.
Well, Luke, Corey, why don't one of you gentlemen take us out of here today?
All right. Well, thanks so much for joining us again for this week's episode of the Between the Lies podcast. If you watch this full episode, then I know that you're clearly interested in money. Now, we've got a free toolkit to help you with the future of your money. So if you're interested in that, if you want to demystify the world of finance a little bit and not let the wool get pulled over your eyes like politicians love to do, then head on over to perfectspiralcapital.com/podcast and grab your free toolkit today. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you.